Hi everyone, I'm Siobhan McDonald from Granger Street Studios. I always look forward to us getting together and talking about art and art history. It's our time. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the program. Time flies. Time ticks. Time is the theme of this program. Visual artists throughout history have toyed with the passing of time as a major motif of their work. We're going to look at several works of art that use time as an underlying subject, share some fun facts, and more. So let's get started. AgeSpan hosts us every month and makes sure this program gets delivered to you. They connect people of all ages and abilities with information and services to help them lead fulfilling lives in the community. I put a phone number here, but you can also check out their website for more information. And we're so thankful to award-winning Right at Home Boston and North for sponsoring this program. With over 20 years of providing home care services, their care team members undergo a thorough background screening and ongoing training in order to provide the best quality home care for their clients. Their mission is to change the world one human interaction at a time. In 2010, artist Christian Marclay made movie history. The Clock is a 24-hour montage composed from thousands of film and television clips from the past 100 years, depicting clocks and other references to time. So James Bond checks his watch at 12:20 a.m. Meryl Streep turns off an alarm clock at 6:30 a.m. A pocket watch ticks at 11:53 a.m. as the Titanic departs. With each clip synchronized to the local time, fictional time on the screen is actually connected to the actual time. The work is really a cinematic tour de force. I didn't see the whole film, but thousands of people sat in movie theaters for 24 hours to watch the whole thing. I was telling my dad about it today, and he looked at me like I had two heads, but I think it's kind of a cool conceptual piece. Whether it's the best of times or the worst of times, it's the only time we've got. This self-portrait by Frida Kahlo, I had to put it in here. It's titled Time Flies, and you can see the clock over her shoulder and also the flying airplane above her head. She painted this in 1929. It was the year she married fellow artist and muralist Diego Rivera. You'll notice she's wearing traditional Mexican dress, gorgeous crafted earrings. This is really a departure from her work before, and we can see the influence Diego had on her here. But this is probably the most recognized work of art about time. The Persistence of Memory is a 1931 painting by artist Salvador Dali. It's widely recognized and frequently referred to in pop culture, and sometimes people call it the melting clocks. Those limp watches are as soft as overripe cheese. It depicts a dream world, doesn't it? Common objects are deformed and displayed in a bizarre way. Salvador Dali was a Spanish surrealist artist renowned for his technical skill. He had studied psychoanalysis and the works of Sigmund Freud before joining the Surrealists. He was very much interested in painting the world of dreams. Despite its memorable subject matter and significant impact on the art world, the actual painting is only slightly larger than a sheet of notebook paper. There are many ways that artists have shown the passage of time. This piece is called The Horse in Motion. It's a series of cabinet cards by Edward Muybridge. It includes 6 cards that each show a series of 6 to 12 automatic electrophotographs showing the movement of a horse. This was shot in June of 1878, and it was an immediate success worldwide. Some people at first didn't believe the images were authentic, really because of these particular spots here on the top where you can see the horse with all 4 legs in the air. They generally regarded horses as much more graceful And the thought of all four legs being in the air at once and where it doesn't look quite so graceful was shocking. These are the still images. Now, in order to do that amazing series of photographs, he ordered lenses from England and had an electrical shutter system built by San Francisco engineers. So on June 15th of 1878, in the presence of invited turfmen and members of the press, a racehorse and his jockey were sent out trotting across the track. So each movement caused one of these strings to trip, break in the electrical circuit, which caused one of these cameras to take a photograph. And now let's take a look at what the 30-second film looks like. A dozen years later, in the 1890s, French Impressionist Claude Monet started this series and ended up painting 30 paintings of the Rouen Cathedral. The paintings in this series each capture the facade of the cathedral at different times of the day and year and reflect changes in its appearance under different lighting conditions. Monet actually rented spaces in Rouen across the street from the cathedral as his temporary studio. The paintings are now scattered in public and private collections around the world, from Tokyo to Los Angeles. Each canvas captures the exterior of the cathedral at a different time of day and in different weather, tracking the shifting light across the stones of the medieval structure. Paintings showing music being played can also be considered paintings about time. After a certain amount of time, every song must end. This artist went to study under Rembrandt for 3 years, beginning when he was just 14 years old. Gerrit Dou. He is said to have spent 5 days painting a hand, and his work was so fine that he found it necessary to manufacture his own brushes. By the way, this piece sold for $3.3 million at auction several years ago. Vanitas paintings also show us time. Vanitas derives from the word Venus. It means empty or fleeting. And in painting, it's usually referred to something that is meant to make us reflect on the precarious nature of existence, on the passing of time, on the nature of worldly goods. So we'll often see skulls and money and candles blown out. Sometimes we see fruit or flowers that are kind of not at their best. And in this painting, we're also seeing the angel is holding a globe here, showing us the literal turning of the world. The theme of time has also been approached in painting from the angle of the different ages of man, like in this painting by Giorgione de Castelfranco. This work represents 3 male figures at 3 different ages, definitely talking to us about time. But let's travel back in time now to the 1950s as we watch this video together.
During the 1950s, learning to tie your shoes was a rite of passage. This was a time before Velcro, and lacing up your shoes and tying a bow was standard practice before heading off to your first day of grade school. Buckles were also popular ways to fasten shoes, so young children learned early how to take care of both. With the help of parents and older siblings, along with a lot of practice, kids gained a bit more independence by tackling this task themselves. Many families during the 1950s were limited in what they could store in their freezer. Therefore, ice cream was relegated to special deliveries by the Good Humor Man. These visits delivered ice cream on a stick to kids during the hot summer months, and the neighborhood would gather just at the sound of the jingle heard coming down the street. That sound alone had kids calling time out during a game, and saw kids of all ages digging the change out of their pockets for a Good Humor bar. Remember spending the entire day outside playing? If so, then you might also remember that you had specially designated clothes you wore to play outside. These play clothes were the ones that Mom didn't mind you getting dirty in. Usually, these clothes would work their way down from Sunday school clothes to becoming school clothes, and finally they would get a last chance at life as play clothes. By the time they reached play clothes status, they were good and worn in, maybe even having a hole or two, but they were perfect for a bike trip around the neighborhood or a good game of stickball. During the early 1950s, having the first television on the block brought all the neighbors over to see it in action. For some, watching Queen Elizabeth's coronation in 1953 might be their first television memory. Or maybe the memories of Dad up on the roof adjusting the antenna while Mom monitored the fuzziness and called out directions through the window is what you remember most. Either way, the arrival of your very first television set was a monumental moment for parents and kids alike. One of the most popular TV shows from that era was The Roy Rogers Show. The show led to comic books, costumes, toy pistols, and other merchandise that made kids super fans. Every kid wanted to be Roy, and they loved dressing up as him to play with a slingshot or a realistic toy cap gun. The toy guns could be loaded with a roll of caps that made a realistic bang and let off a distinct smelling gun smoke that made every kid feel like a real cowboy. Automobiles in the 50s were spacious, and the large bench-style seats gave you plenty of room to move around, especially since cars didn't come equipped with seat belts. The car culture that was created in the 1950s became iconic in every aspect. From drive-in burger joints to the drive-in movie, the ultimate feeling of freedom was found behind the wheel of a car. One other thing you might remember is stopping by your local filling station to have the attendant fill up the gas tank with leaded gas, and at the time, it only cost around 13 cents per gallon. Were some of your best memories spent with your dad? Maybe you enjoyed setting up a Lionel train set and doing some model railroading. The trips with him to the hobby shop on a Saturday morning were always exciting. Between the model railroad miniatures, the balsa wood airplanes, and the model kits, those trips were always special. If you grew up during the 1950s, you most likely watched Davy Crockett during a 5-part series that aired on ABC. Disney produced the story of the real-life frontiersman, which starred Fess Parker. This broadcast was so popular that merchandising went through the roof. Every kid wanted a coonskin cap and would go out exploring their neighborhood. The coonskin cap would go on to become an iconic part of life during the 1950s. Family time was an important part of life during this decade. If families weren't watching their new television, they could be found playing popular board games of the time. The Game of Life, Scrabble, and Yahtzee were among the favorites, and these games provided quality family time together. This was, of course, a time before television offered hundreds of channels, and electronics consumed everyone's attention. Family game nights were usually a standard tradition that took up an entire evening and brought everyone together. You might also remember a toy called Zip the Monkey. Zip was plush with a rubber face, ears, and hands. He wore a yellow shirt that read Zip on the front, red corduroy pants with suspenders, a red hat, and white rubber shoes. This monkey became everyone's favorite plush toy after the children's show Howdy Doody introduced the real-life Zippy the Chimp to the world. On rainy days, the 50s were made for comics, and 3D comics were all the rage. Your favorite superhero or cartoon character now jumped off the page when you slipped on the glasses that came with the comic. 3D comics flooded the market after the success of the 3D Mighty Mouse comic. This fad lasted for just a short time because the novelty of 3D began to wear off, and readers started questioning the lack of storylines. The boys may have had Davy Crockett, but young girls during the 1950s were first introduced to the characters of Cinderella and Prince Charming. Disney released the movie in 1950, and the popular fairy tale resonated with young girls around the world. CBS even released a television version starring Julie Andrews that attracted the largest TV audience ever. The idea of a girl meeting her prince and living happily ever after became the ultimate dream, and the optimistic decade that was the 1950s was the perfect time to capitalize on such a story. Saddle shoes became a must-have in any girl's wardrobe during the 1950s. These classic leather shoes looked good with either a skirt or jeans, but it was a chore to keep them clean and polished. Nothing went better with a pair of polished saddle shoes than a pair of bright white bobby socks that folded at the ankle. The 50s were the pinnacle for this footwear, and seeing a pair of these shoes can immediately transport you back to that time.
I think of clocks when I think of time, but calendars are an important way for us to tell time. The Maya calendar stone is the most famous ancient Mexican sculpture. It was carved sometime between 1502 and 1521. Carved from a single sparkling piece of igneous rock, the sunstone weighs more than 20 tons. All of its symbols relate to the sun and highlight the sun's role in Aztec belief and religion. Around the same time that sunstone was being carved, in medieval Europe, wealthy patrons saw calendars inside books of hours, described as medieval bestsellers. The manuscripts served as prayer books and featured richly colored illuminations that a patron could custom order, often showing the activities associated with each season. The books frequently opened with a calendar listing religious holidays, then subsequent pages delved into the most important days of each month. Speaking of calendars, the Gregorian calendar is the most widely used calendar globally today. It was introduced in 1582 by Pope Gregory the 13th. The Hebrew calendar is steeped in scripture and is used by millions around the world for religious and cultural purposes. Also known as the Hijra calendar, the Islamic calendar is used by Muslims to determine religious observances like Ramadan. The Chinese calendar is used to determine the dates of festivals and other auspicious events, although the Gregorian calendar is the official calendar in modern China. There are also Hindu calendars, Persian calendars, Japanese calendars, and so many more. Sometimes it's hard to write on those little calendar squares. You can buy really big calendars like these ones. I like the fun colors. Speaking of fun, it's time for some fun facts. The first person to seriously advocate for daylight savings time was an entomologist who wanted more sunlight hours to look for insects. The 10th president of the United States has living grandchildren. Okay, folks, this is a fun fact and kind of wild. John Tyler was born in 1790 and was inaugurated as president in 1841. He had children with his second wife pretty late in his life, including a son who was born in 1853. That son also had children in his later years. His son, Harrison Tyler, was born in 1928, and he is in his 90s and still alive today. Incredible. The New York Times predicted that humans wouldn't be able to fly for at least 1,000,000 years. They did that in 1903, which, by the way, was the same year that the Wright brothers would later fly their plane. Oxford University has been around longer than the Aztecs. When the Great Pyramids of Giza were being built, woolly mammoths were still living. This is one of my favorites, though. Jonathan is a seashell giant tortoise. His approximate age is estimated to be 192 this year, making him the oldest known living land animal. While clocks have existed since the 13th century, it wasn't until the 16th century that they were miniaturized and became the first watches, thanks to a German watchmaker from Nuremberg. Far from resembling the watches we wear today, had an egg shape, and these early watches were called Nuremberg eggs, in keeping with the origins of its creator, Peter Heinlein. Gradually, they became flatter. The invention of watches was necessitated by the need to have a time teller that doesn't depend on a power source to work. By and large, in the early years, as you can imagine, a pocket watch told society so much about a gentleman with regard to his social standing and his place in society. But fear not, this social divide didn't mean that the poor or common man couldn't own a pocket watch. They did own one if they inherited it, or if there was goodwill from friends or family members. And I had to include this, the pocket watch of the train engineer, right? And train conductor, such a classic pocket watch. Do you know anyone who had a pocket watch? I used to love to listen to the ticking of my uncle's pocket watch. Pocket watches ceased to be part of a professional dress around 1943. Now, for a few years in the 70s and the 1980s, they returned to style as men began to take a greater interest in their dress. The most expensive pocket watch ever sold at auction is the Patek Philippe Henry Grave Super Complication. Here you see a picture of it, and yes, that price is correct. It sold for $24 million. It's one of the most complicated pocket watches ever created. This timepiece contains 920 individual parts with 430 screws, 110 wheels, 120 removable parts, and 70 jewels, all of them handcrafted on a tiny scale. Incredible. The first wristwatch was created at the end of the 16th century, when the Earl of Leicester had the idea of attaching a bracelet to a watch as a gift to Queen Elizabeth I. At the end of the 19th century, the wristwatch began to be adopted because it was much more practical. I kind of fell in love with these colorful wristwatches. Aren't these fun? I'm obsessed. Now, speaking of time, ours is running short, so I'll just leave you with this interesting tidbit about wristwatches, just in case any of you are collectors out there. The highest price ever paid for one was a Patek Philippe Grandmaster chime. It just sold a few years ago for $31.19 million. Sometimes I say to myself, oh my gosh, $31 million for a watch, that's outrageous. But then I think, gee whiz, I would love to have a little Rembrandt, and that's worth millions of dollars. So I guess it's all in what we look at as art. And these are certainly gorgeous and crafted so beautifully, aren't they? So they are also art about time. Of course, today I was telling my mom about this program, and she said, oh, that's such a great theme. You can talk all about mythology and how it relates to time. I guess I'll have to save that for another time, though. Thanks, Mom, because our time is up for right now. Thanks again to Right at Home Boston North and AgeSpan for making it possible for us to spend time together each month. I really look forward to this. Wow, that was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed the program as much as I enjoyed it. It's been great to spend time together. It always is. I'll see you again next month with some more art history, and more fun facts. Until then, goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. It's time to say goodbye. Goodbye, my friends. See you soon.